The meeting will start momentarily. Looks like it's working.
Good evening, everyone. This evening's special board meeting is called to order at 5:03 p.m. Roll call, Ms. Amaker.
President Weinstein,
Present.
Vice President Wallach,
Here.
Clerk Wood,
Present.
Trustee Kelly,
Here.
Trustee Scott,
Here.
Trustee Kermode,
Here.
Trustee Napier,
Here.
Superintendent Larson Everson,
Present.
and I'm Idalia Amaker.
Thank you. Please stand and join me in the flag salute and a moment of silent reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 2, approval of the agenda. Is there any discussion regarding tonight's agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Kelly, I make the motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay, a tie.
No, you got it.
Thank you, Trustee Scott and Trustee Kermode. We'll go with Trustee Kermode on that one. Roll call vote, Ms. Amaker.
President Weinstein,
Aye.
Vice President Wallach,
Aye.
Clerk Wood, Trustee Kelly,
Aye.
Trustee Scott,
Aye.
Trustee Kermode,
Aye.
Trustee Napier,
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Public comments. Public comments will be allowed on each specific action item prior to board action. The board president will recognize any member of the audience wishing to speak on items not on the agenda but directly related to school business. Pursuant to Board Bylaw 9323, the board may limit comments to no more than 3 minutes per person. And we do have some public comment. I should wait. So the two public comments I have here are pertaining to board item 4. So I will wait to that section for them to speak. Okay, are there any additional public comments from someone who did not get to do a yellow item that's about district business but not on the agenda tonight?
I think they're all related to the same, to the public hearing.
Okay, so seeing that the public comments that we have are all related to the public hearing, when we get to the section on public comments for the hearing, I will call folks up to make their comments. Okay, agenda item 4, public hearing pursuant to Elections Code Section 10010A2 to receive public input regarding the content of draft trustee area maps and the proposed sequence of elections. The special meeting is hereby adjourned at 5:07 PM to hold a public hearing pursuant to Elections Code 10010A2 to receive public input regarding the content of draft trustee area maps and the sequence of elections. The meeting will reconvene after the close of the public hearing. To start out with, we will now have a presentation by our demographer and attorneys regarding the trustee area maps and the sequence of elections. Ms. Leone and Dr. Johnson, you're with us?
Yes, good evening.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay, I will see if I can share my screen here. There we go. So this will look similar for those that were at the last meeting, as we are going back through the same map options as required by the statutes. So let me walk through this. Where we are on the timeline, obviously this started back in May with the resolution intent. Then there were initial 2 hearings later that same month in May, and draft maps were drawn and published at the end of the month. We did hold the first hearing to talk about those draft maps on June 2nd. And so now we're coming back to, again, consider those draft maps on June 9th, looking ahead to the final vote next week on final adoption. This is a fast process, and that is all in order to get this in place in time for this November's elections. So the elections this year will be held by whatever map that the board eventually selects. Just to briefly revisit the rules for how these maps are drawn. On the left, you can see the federal laws, which are requirements. We must have an equal population in each trustee area. We must comply with the requirements of the Federal Voting Rights Act, and we must follow the constitutional ban on racial gerrymandering. Then on the right-hand side, we have traditional principles, and these are more discretion, where you can decide which map you feel best balances these principles and best addresses these principles. So the traditional principles, as you see here, they have to be contiguous. We want to respect communities of interest. We want to try to follow visible boundaries wherever we can. We want the trustee areas to be reasonably compact. One consideration that is a traditional principle but the board has chosen not to follow is to intentionally try to look at where the incumbents live and try to keep them separate. And pursuant to the board's direction, we have not looked at that. So that is not a consideration how these maps are drawn. And the last principle is taking into account planned future growth within the very small range of flexibility allowed within that equal population requirement. So taking all those considerations into account and taking into account the board's look at both 7 trustee area maps and 5 trustee area maps, we have, I'll start with the 2 maps that are 7 trustees. There are 4 trustee areas, number 3 through 6, that are very concentrated in the Golden Hills to Tehachapi city area. And then the other 3 trustee areas, area 2 comes into Golden Hills, and then 1 and 7 are essentially in the more rural area, with all 3 of those going up into Bear Valley Springs or into Stallion Springs. So this gives a very much a rural 3 districts, and to the degree possible, and then 4 districts in the more densely populated Golden Hills, Tehachapi area. In contrast, map 702 has just 2 districts concentrating Golden Hills and Tehachapi. And then 3 other districts take pieces of either Golden Hills or Tehachapi, but then go and blend with more rural areas. It's more of a blending. This does also allow 2 districts that are entirely, or 2 trustee areas that are entirely over in the west, over in Stallion Springs and Bear Valley. So 2 very different approaches to how these maps are drawn. On the 5 map front, a similar set of choices, but in this case we have the blue area 2, which is Tehachapi, and then essentially everything that's, well, almost everything that's northeast of Highway 58. We have area 3 that's all in Golden Hills, and then area 4 that's part Golden Hills and part Tehachapi, with areas 1 and 5 then taking up the western and southern more rural areas, 1 being all of Bear Valley Springs and going up to Keene, and then 5 being Stallion Springs over to Mountain Meadows. The last of the 4 maps that I have to walk through for you, and I realize I'm going through them fairly fast. I'm happy to come back and go into detail and answer any questions you have about them, of course. Map 502 runs right along Highway 58 for the northeastern trustee area 3, which then also comes down into Tehachapi. Then we have trustee area 4 that is all either Tehachapi population or Golden Hills population, and 2 and 5, which blend parts of Golden Hills with more rural areas, and then 1 that is entirely over in the west, over in Stallion Springs and Bear Valley Springs. So some maps to get the discussion going, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have about any of these.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. So I will now open up the public comments, and I'm going to start with Mr. Kaminsky. Saying something.
Good evening, Board. I'm here tonight to counter the board decision of the demographer ignoring where the trustees live. As you are fully aware, there are 4 trustees whose terms expired this year. 3 of the proposed maps prevent all 4 from running for re-election, as there are areas in the same areas where trustees whose terms end in 2024 live in that area. In the 4th map, trustees Weinstein and Kermode would run against each other. Shouldn't the people of this district, the school district, decide if they should be re-elected? It should be the 4's choice to run, and if they want to, their constituents, by their ballots, decide if they are worthy of another term. A majority of board members should not decide for them, nor take the vote out of the hands of the people. As it is now, that appears to be what is going to happen. This majority fashions itself as being the autocrats in an autocracy, not members of a democracy. With that, I would like trustees Kermode, Scott, Wallach, and Weinstein to declare their intentions tonight, if they are running for re-election or not. If anyone desires to run for re-election this year, those maps should be adjusted to make that happen. Members of the board, through approving any of these maps in their current form, should not deny the democratic right of another to run for a government position. Trustee Kelly, along with trustees Scott, Wood, and Kermode, stated last Thursday that they each found no problem with the maps as presented. Are you 4 in favor of running an autocratic school district or one that believes in democracy and fairness? It appears on this issue, one of great significance to the future of TUSD, you are in favor of autocracy. While there have been only 8 to 10 public comments thus far in the process, all were for keeping the number of trustees at 7 or letting the public decide through the ballot in November. Mrs. Weinstein and Mrs. Wood stated a few meetings ago, when the board approved the accelerated schedule for this by-trustee issue, that they were elected representatives of their areas and could vote for it, despite arguments of more time to allow the public better understanding of the issue. If they are truly representatives of the public, they would honor the public comments made thus far to stay at 7 trustees and not approve submitting a waiver to the State Board of Education to forego an election so that they, the board, could approve a lowering of the number of board members. True representatives would respect their constituents' comments, not disregard and ignore them as if their voices were unimportant and meaningless. As I asked before, trustees Kermode, Scott, Wallach, and Weinstein need to declare now on their intentions, and then the demographers need to be directed to modify the map so that if any of those 4 wishing to run can. Thank you.
Thank you. No,
I can't respond? Brief statement or question?
that's correct.
Not on this, but any other one I can. All right.
Ms. Purdy.
I guess I don't have to say a whole lot, but I just want to, also agree with the previous speaker that people should be able to vote on it. And I also agree that the maps should be modified so those people who want to run again can run again. Thank you.
Thank you. Lara Stein.
Hello, just a quick correction on my name. It's Laura Steinke.
Apologize. Can you state with your mic on so it's for the record?
Laura Steinke.
Thank you.
So I see we have 2 processes, and the first process is the waiver process, and the second process is the election process. An election process allows the community to feel respected, and it also allows the community to feel included. Both of those things happen when you have an election. When you have a waiver process, then you have indicated that they are not going to be involved in the decision. I think that when it comes time to vote and board members make a decision if they're going for the waiver or if they're going for the election, if they choose the waiver, it's going to give a certain opinion of their constituents. But if they go for the election, it shows a different respect for the voter. So I'd like you guys to consider the implications of the decision and how it reflects on your relationship with your constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Shanks.
Hello. I also agree with the gentleman back here, the first gentleman up, that the people should be allowed to determine, not otherwise. And I also believe that we should have 7 trustees and not 5.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Sir, please approach the podium.
Good evening, board members, trustees. My name is Eric Purdy, spouse of Gail Purdy. I'm up here just to voice my opinion. I do agree with Mr. Paul Kaminsky's request tonight. I'm definitely on board with what he had to say. I'm new to the game or entering the game late, but when I was here last meeting, I was really moved by Miss Claudia Elliott that spoke towards the end of our gathering, and it just kind of reminded me that this issue on whether or not we should have 5 or 7 board members does seem to be being circumvented by applying for the waiver. And I liked her point last week where she was saying that we would be violating the will of the people, because I believe at some point in Tehachapi's history that it was probably taken to a vote is how we ended up with the 7 trustee board. So I am in favor of that. I am understanding that we are a constitutional republic. I know all of you took an oath of office to defend the Constitution of the United States. And one of those core principles is we the people are really the sovereign, and you guys all serve at our consent. So I want to see you guys respect the people's request. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other public comment to this public hearing from those that are here? Yes, ma'am, come on up.
Good evening. My name is Taylor Rethwish, and I'm a parent of 2 small kids. We're just getting started in school. I think it goes without saying that in America, you should expect pushback anytime a governing body tries to rule to remove rights from the free public. And in this case, as you've heard from others here tonight, is obviously no different. After the last year, we've endured the request to waive the vote of the public in the matter of decreasing the number of board members. For me, is simply adding another straw of distrust to the camel's back. I think retaining the current board size will allow for more diverse representation than a reduced 5-member board would, and that would only serve our school district better. Since my vote may not be allowed, please hear my voice. I support retaining a board size of 7 members, and I support proposed map number 702. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? I do have one public comment that came in via email to read, but if there's someone out here in the audience that wants to go first, that's fine. Okay. This comment is from Brian Reel. Members of the board, several weeks ago, this redistricting process was initiated to avoid potential litigation. Last week, your legal consultant made it clear that adopting a 5-member map at this time would result in a significant litigation risk. I noticed that the 5-member maps are still attached to the agenda. I would appreciate hearing board comments regarding whether a 5-member board is still under consideration. Any other public comment? Any other discussion for the public hearing? Hearing.
Public comment or board discussion?
Public hearing comment.
But you're saying, you just said discussion, how about the board now? You just told Joe no earlier, so is it?
I meant to the public hearing, yes, sorry. For the public hearing, our part comes
The
up.
board can speak now, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, if there's questions on the, yes.
Sure, I want to hear from you. You told Joe no earlier, so I want clarification if the board can speak now.
Yes, to the public hearing comments,
Okay,
yes.
just want to make sure.
Yes.
I have a comment regarding the public hearing comment. Paul, I want to thank you for your comments. Your topic has always been the elephant in the room. Many of the people have echoed your same comments to me. This appears to be a perfect example of gerrymandering.
I've made my position pretty clear, so I don't need to go on and go on about it. But I'm not running for school board next, so that's my position. So you have your answer.
My first comment is to respectfully disagree with my fellow trustee that this is an example of gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is when you do adjust the boundaries to benefit a political party or a particular candidate. This is the opposite of gerrymandering. This is a blind drawing of the maps without consideration to where we live and without consideration of whether we would have been eligible to run on the different maps. So my feeling is I had no input into who was excluded and who wasn't until we saw the maps. We specifically directed the demographer to not consider where the board members resided when the maps were drawn. So these were objectively drawn. As someone who actually told the superintendent that I had been on the fence and I had decided to run for re-election, that was the night that we went into closed session, and I can't disclose the conversation. So whether I vote in favor of 5 or 7, one out of the 4 opportunities would allow me the chance to run for re-election. And that's where I was initially. And then I thought about it over the following week, and that's where I decided that regardless of whether it allows me to seek another term or not, my decision has to be based on what I believe is the most effective and the most balanced way to run the district, and that whether it excludes me from running or not should not be part of the consideration. And that's where I'm at. So whether I can run or not will not enter into my decision of 5 versus 7 or on map 701, 702, 501, or 502. So that's my comment.
I would like to ask Ms. Leone or Dr. Johnson or both to just for the public and for the record to talk again about the legality and how we got to the drawing of the 4 maps, 2B and 5, 2B and 7, as a memory refresher.
I'll defer to Ms. Leone.
Yeah, Dr. Johnson, I'm happy to do that with your permission, President Weinstein. I will review. Let me pull up my little calendar here because we reviewed it at our last meeting, and I will review the dates again. So the matter of the decrease in the size of the board was on the agenda for May 17, 2022. It was item 5. And there was board discussion, or the agenda item was board discussion and possible action to approve adoption of a resolution proposing to the Kern County Committee to decrease from 7 to 5 the number of board members. That resolution had a number. It was 02 May 22. The outcome of that vote was that the motion failed. But what ensued was discussion among the board that included a desire to see draft maps with both 5 and 7. And there was a statement or a statement made by one and perhaps more of the trustees that it would be helpful to see what these maps looked like before making the decision to bring back, if you do, an agenda item to consider the decrease. On that same agenda was item 7, and it was a board discussion and possible action to approve a second resolution to seek a waiver of the election requirement on a proposal for a decrease. This was done to provide options to the board of trustees. If you eventually determine to request the county committee to reduce the size of your board and the county committee approves, that approval becomes a requirement for an election. Generally, with electoral matters, the state of this sort, the State Board of Education, and sometimes locally, waives the election requirement so that the change can be implemented at the earliest possible time. Without a waiver, it's uncertain when you would be able to implement your 5-trustee area plan. We looked at a couple of calendars. However, with a waiver, you would be able certainly to implement it much earlier. So the board actually passed a resolution instructing the superintendent to seek that waiver, and that has happened. And it's pending at the State Department of Education right now, and it is under review. In connection with that process, there was the meeting on the 17th where the decrease or the potential decrease and the process was discussed at the board level. On May 18, the superintendent held a consultation, a lengthy consultation with stakeholders, and received input, much of that input written, and it was all provided to the State Department of Education. The next day, on the 19th, the waiver application was completed and it was filed on the 20th. So all of this has been not to determine a course of action, but to enable options here. So the board has seen maps with 7 and 5 trustee areas, which informs a decision. The board can bring back the question of decreasing the size of the board, or it can determine that it doesn't bring it back. If it brings it back, it can vote up or down on that. And if it votes up or down, it can proceed with implementing the 5 trustee area system, or that can be placed on the ballot. In other words, what has happened so far leaves all options open to the board. And that's where we stand right now. However, unless action is taken, the status quo right now is an election in 2022 in trustee areas with 7 members. Was that helpful, President? I can go back and repeat any part of that.
Thank you, Ms. Leone. Another thing you have for tonight, I understand a couple slides that you wanted to present for the public hearing so that the public might have some more information. Can you please provide that for the public?
I am happy to do that, and I did this in direct response. Let me pull this up. To the public comment that came up, and I thought, well, there's a little bit of misinterpretation here. So I hope that this very brief PowerPoint clears it up. Much of what I said is already in this PowerPoint. So this is the Q&A that occurred to me from reading that public comment. To to be able to make sure the public understands the process. Number one, can we bring this agenda item back up? That has been asked several times. And according to the Tehachapi Unified School District's policy, procedures, and practice, yes, the resolution can be brought back to the agenda and voted on. And your general counsel is present to address any details there. Number two, may the board vote on such a resolution at its June 16th special meeting? Yes, obviously it needs to be properly agendized. Three, can the decrease be implemented for the 2022 election? Right now, as we sit here, the answer is no. It needs to be approved by the voters, or there needs to be a waiver of the election. We are tentatively on a September waiver calendar there, been in communication on the potential of having the waiver on the July calendar to facilitate the board's decision. But as we sit here right now, neither have happened. So the board can make that decision, send it up to the county committee, but the decrease would be implemented at a future election. So if the decrease isn't approved, this is where we are. The trustee area election goes to the county committee on June 29th. If you don't approve the decrease, we'd withdraw that waiver application, certainly pursuant to your instruction, but that's our understanding right now. And then the election process would start. There would be a submission of the map to the county. There would be election specifications sent off to the superintendent, and election dates would begin to fall. So this is where we are right now without a change by the board. If the board decides you would go on, we would prepare for an election in the 7 trustee area plan in 2022. Thereafter, there would be mapping for the 5 trustee areas. You've already seen them. You may select one of the maps that's already out there, and we would have to revisit the issue with the county committee with a second map. And assuming we get the waiver, the decrease could be used in November 2024 or 2026. But it cannot be used now without a vote or a waiver. So I hope that clears things up. I didn't want there to be an impression that there was anything illegal about the board looking at 5 trustee area plans. It's doing so to inform its decisions. And number 2, questions about bringing it back before the board, I believe have been answered and can be answered again by your general counsel. And I'm happy, President Weinstein, to address any questions there. I'm sorry I didn't get this little bit of information to you earlier. I was tied up in court proceedings most of the day, but this will be posted, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Leone. Appreciate that. Ms. Elliott.
Yes, this is a question based on what Ms. Leone just said. If I want to make sure I understood it correctly, that there was a meeting with stakeholders. We know that because the PowerPoint is online. The meeting with stakeholders, I don't know who the stakeholders were, and it wasn't a public meeting. But if I understood correctly, Ms. Leone just said that input from the stakeholders accompanied the application to the state board for the waiver. So if I understood that correctly, I'm wondering if the public can know what the input from the stakeholders might have been. Thank you.
Ms. Leone, could you answer that, please?
Yes, the application is public record. Everything that we sent up, I'm saying the department, the administration, at the instruction of the board, is public record. I believe the superintendent has a copy of the waiver application.
Thank you. Any other public comments to the public hearing? Ms. Purdy.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I just wanted to know, because I'm ignorant of that, who are the stakeholders? I feel like the people are the stakeholders by definition. So if somebody could straighten that out, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Leone, can you explain who the stakeholders are?
Yes, the stakeholders are listed in statute. The groups, the interested groups that we, at a minimum, we have to consult. But I believe the invitation to the meeting was far broader. And President Weinstein, with your permission, I would defer to the superintendent. It was an extensive meeting.
Yes, I don't have the list in front of me, but my recollection would be that we included all of the CTF members, and that's the Citizens Task Force group. We invited all PTO presidents who currently serve their schools. We invited the Superintendent's Parent Advisory Council to attend, as well as all representatives from school site councils at each school site. And beyond that, I believe the District English Learner Advisory Committee was invited as well. Thank you. Yes, and union leadership. Thank you for the reminder. And there may have been others without having the list in front of me, but that's it was a pretty large group that was invited. Not all attended. We had a Zoom meeting, and also information was sent out via email, and they had the opportunity to complete a stakeholders form that was just very straightforward, stating if they were opposed to a waiver, in favor of a waiver, or neutral. And they had a place on the form that they could put comments as well. Thank you.
And if I may, President Weinstein, I do want to point out that a point well taken and fair, that the voters are stakeholders, and their ability to comment is at every single one of these public hearings that the board is sponsoring. So that's an opportunity, and as I said, that our participation is increasing, and it's encouraging.
Thank you. Can you please come up?
I'm Christina Funderburk. I'm General Counsel. We received some of the stakeholder input after the waiver was sent off to the Department of Education, and we made sure that all of those were forwarded and applied to the application as well.
Thank you. Other comments to the public hearing? Ms. Elliott?
So, of course, I can do a public records request and ask for a copy of the waiver application, but it would seem to be in the spirit of what you say you're trying to do here to just put it online with everything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Purdy, do you have a new public comment to the public hearing?
Yes, the same thing about putting it online. I'd like to know where to find it. If it's put online, can that be put out on Parent Square? Thank you.
Thank you. The public hearing is now closed, and the special meeting is reconvened at 5:46 p.m. Agenda item 5, board discussion regarding the content of draft trustee area maps and sequence of elections and possible directions to demographer. We'll start with an introduction by Superintendent Larson Everson.
Should I have asked Ms. Leone a question beforehand or now? Okay.
President Weinstein and Board, this discussion and the potential related board action are guided by Education Code Section 10010A2. After reviewing the draft maps and hearing public comment, the board may discuss possible desired changes. The board may give directions to the demographer to make changes if there is a consensus for each particular change. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. Okay, so now we're opening this up for board discussion. I'd like to start with Trustee Wallach, who I believe has a question for Ms. Leone.
Yes, I do. This is a lot of information, and I'd like to clear a couple things up. Currently, we're at 7 board members. Is that correct?
Yes.
And because of the waivers in place, gives the board the opportunity to overturn the 7 trustees for 5 at the next meeting?
No. It provides the opportunity for you to request that the county committee consider a decrease in the number of trustees. You are without power to do that on your own.
So as it stands at 7? So why would...
As it stands, you are at 7.
Why would we, if we're at 7, how the county overturns it to be 5? They make the decision? Is that what you're saying?
This is a process that sets forth in code, and yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Because I understood...
The county committee is in charge of the organizational status of school districts. And the county committee has sole authority to increase or decrease the size of boards. It's a common thing that happens. It can come before the county committee in a number of ways. But typically, it's brought forth by a resolution of the board.
Yeah, that was my next point. I understand that you said a resolution can be brought forward next board meeting to negate the 7 and replace it with a 5?
It doesn't negate the 7. It requests the county committee to consider decreasing the size of the board. The county committee would then hold a public hearing on that issue.
So they will be making the ultimate decision between 7 and 5?
Correct.
Okay.
If a resolution was brought forward. Okay, Trustee Napier, did you have a comment as well? A question?
Yeah, I have a handful of things here. So then the superintendent mentioned about the surveys that were taken where they could fill out, check different boxes and so on and so forth. It's highly possible I missed it, but did the board get all that information or a copy of the results, or did we see all that, or did I miss it?
No, it was at the board's direction that we applied for the waiver and I followed the direction from the board to do so, working with legal counsel, convening the meeting with stakeholders. So they're included in the waiver application. The waiver application, a copy of it, I don't have one myself, legal counsel has that, but so a copy of the waiver application was not provided to the board.
Okay. I think that's very valuable information for us. So yeah. In addition to that, we're still at 7 trustees as it stands, as Ms. Leone said, and Trustee Wallach clarified for us. And there was a very specific vote for the board, and we voted to stay at 7 trustees a while back. I feel like there's this kind of general misunderstanding when we take a vote, and then shortly thereafter, we go into this process of just kind of chit-chatting amongst the board, and all of a sudden it's, oh yeah, we'd like to see 5-member maps also. Well, we just took a vote to stay at 7. And the overwhelming voice of the public from every meeting that I was not here last time, I listened to it, this meeting, the meetings prior, the overwhelming voice of the people is to stay at 7. My opinion is we just walk away from the 5-member maps now and be done with it. And we should be giving the voice of the people, as I stated the last time, is get the voice of the people. There are levels of authority that we can have, we do have, or we should have. The level of authority I think we should have is to say, let the people vote. As I mentioned before, the lady that mentioned that her kids are just coming into school, right? She's new to the area. There's people that may be having kids someday, or they have toddlers that are not even in school. They need a voice. They're not getting Parent Square notifications. They're seeing this stuff in the paper, but it's difficult. It's tough. Give the people a voice and move on. Stop with the 5-member maps. Pause the rush. Slow it down. Go to November. Let the people vote to say, do you want 5 or 7? If they want 5, then we're done. This conversation's over. But this continual conversation of this hint of maybe we'll come back, but we just took a vote. Talk about a slap in the face to the people that voted against that. Oh, but we didn't get what we liked and we saw something different. We changed our minds. Now let's go back. You got to be kidding me. Not one person in the public has stood up here and said a 5-member board is what they want. Not one person. None. There's a couple board members on here that have said to me, they have said, with zero detail, it's more efficient and it's better. I quote them. It is more efficient and better. With no substance to back that up. Zero. Representation, this maps, our district is massive. We are spread out so far and so diverse that, I forgot your name, the lady in the back there, but she made a very good point. When those rights are taken away from the people, they're never coming back. Ever, ever, ever. So the more representation that we can tell the public, have 7 members. Some of those areas in these maps are extremely huge. If you've been in this area for a long time, they're ridiculous. I mean, a 5-member map is a joke. To think that anybody, number one, can campaign in those types of areas is impossible. Number two, to actually feel like you can represent them and be a voice of those people is impossible. And I do agree that we should have 7 trustee areas, period. Not 3 in Bear Valley, not Rick, Scott, and I 2 feet away from each other in our little neighborhood. We should move on, let the people vote if they want that with 7 trustee areas, period. The time wasted, the money wasted with 5-member maps is a joke. It's a slap in the face to those of us who voted against going to 5 members. So I'm done with that. I think it's a joke.
Other board discussion? Trustee Kelly.
Thank you, President Weinstein. I'm going to start with the fact that we have had a ton of meetings. I'm sure I've lost some sleep somewhere, so I may have just dreamed this, but I want to think that we, as the board, saw the maps we saw them non-blind, so we saw our addresses on the maps, and to me, I think it was real, but like I said, I could have been asleep. It really looked like gerrymandering at that point. The lines went every which way, and it was kind of crazy, and it just didn't make sense. So the maps that are actually posted at this time appear to be the cleanest process. The numbers are well within the 10%, and I forget what the word is, but we're well within our legal positioning and numbers and comparisons of where we're at. We obviously have avoided some sort of legal action, potentially at least on one process, the initial process anyway. So I think where we're at, so whether you're a fan of 2 maps, 4 maps, 1,200 maps, that's up to you. I think the maps that we have in front of us are the most clear-cut and concise maps based on the 5 or 7. I'm going to state it again that I am in favor of the 7. Thank you, but I would like everybody to hear me. I appreciate the applause, but I would like everybody to be able to hear me. I feel that the vast majority, if not all of the board, has removed themselves to the best of their ability to look at the process in the future, not today, not tomorrow, but as best we can 10, 12 years down the road to make sure that we put a legacy out there that the community feels that, 1, they are part of the process, 2, that they actually have their vote available to them based on their neighbors. To have three of us potentially in one area or split that up, it just looked atrocious to me and it didn't make a lot of sense. So with that, I'm going to come to a conclusion and say, I think we are where we are. It would be my opinion not to change the maps at all at this point. We're not to a point to vote on the maps yet, I don't believe. But when the time is, I'm ready. Thank you.
Other board
Yeah,
discussion?
I had a question.
Trustee Scott?
I just have a quick clarification question for Trustee Kelly, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Can you just clarify, you say you're happy with the way the maps are, you're talking 5 or 7?
Oh, I'm for 7, there's no doubt. But the way the maps are presented, I'm good with all of them.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay,
Trustee
okay.
Scott.
What would the election cost the school district if we had an election?
Can you say that again, please?
What would it cost the school district to get an election? Would that county pay for that, or does this district have to pony up some money?
Are you referring to if there was somehow an action that it would be on the...
On the ballot, right.
On the ballot?
Right.
What the cost would be? Ms. Leone, do you have any idea how to gauge
Where's
that?
Hojat?
Hi there. It would, it would be a special measure election for the school district. The school district would pay the cost. The county would not. It would be a cost to the county. Generally, that cost is assessed based on the number of items on the ballot. And we would have to bring that cost back to you, but we can get it from elections. It would be based on number of registered voters and the cost of all of the processing of that question on the ballot.
Trustee Commode, I wanted to give you a chance to speak if you had anything you wanted to say.
Well, I think for the purposes of the agenda item tonight, which is the content of the draft trustee area maps and possible direction to the demographer, I think Trustee Kelly was right on the point that tonight the question isn't whether it's 5 or 7, it's whether the board intends to direct the demographer to make any further changes. And so I'm in absolute agreement with Trustee Kelly as far as his comments about whether he's accepting of the maps as in the way that they're currently drawn. So I agree with that. I think the drawing of the maps was based upon looking at communities, looking at meeting all of the statutory criteria as far as deviation in the sizes and in percentages of different categories of voters. So I agree with Trustee Kelly that I don't see anything to direct the demographer to change. The debate of 5 versus 7 is not actually on the agenda tonight, and if it's agendized at a future meeting, then I'm sure there will be additional spirited discussion. I would just like to restate something that I've said previously as a reminder that at the board meeting where the resolution failed on a 4-3 vote, when I voted no, I said it was specifically because I wanted to see what the 5 area maps looked like versus the 7 area maps, and to hear feedback from the public. So that's where I'm at. The call of the question tonight is specifically the content of the maps, not 5 versus 7.
Trustee Napier?
I would respectfully disagree with that, Trustee Kermode. There are maps for 5 and there are maps for 7 on there. And so I recognize that the intent is not to remove 5 or remove 7, but it does beg the conversation that if we're talking about 5, there's a waiver put forward to take the voice away from the people, If we've already voted, the resolution that you voted no on was specific to stay at 7, period, not with caveats. It was no. It wasn't, if we vote this down, we will do, no, it was stay at 7, period. I understand you qualified your vote after that. However, we're at 7 today. And the overwhelming voice of the people has been, give us a voice, stay at 7, keep better representation. So I understand that what we will be voting on or making an answer on tonight is not that. I think it does beg the conversation a bit. And I do want to make a comment to Trustee Scott's comment about the cost of the election. I think that is actually a slap in the face to the people to say that there is a dollar amount on your vote, and that is ridiculous. So as a voter, I'm offended that anybody would even say, oh, $20,000, whatever, is something we should say, well, it's too expensive. Are you kidding me?
I didn't say that.
Well, you're
No,
even,
I
even
did not say
considering the
that.
cost.
All he said was, what was the cost? Because I was curious about it. What's it going to cost us? I want all the information.
It doesn't
like you keep
matter what
saying.
the cost is. We spend money around
Well,
here like it's candy.
If it's $5 million, we're going to have a problem.
Oh,
But it's not. I just wanted the amount. That's all I wanted to hear.
Okay.
And then you're demeaning.
Okay.
It's not demeaning, it's how I feel. Just because you're
Can I
offended by
let-
it, it's not my fault.
President Weinstein?
Yes, go ahead.
Can I just-
Dr. Johnson.
Just a point purely for clarification, but I've heard the discussion this evening about we voted to remain at 7, and I think that's a little bit not quite accurate, because what you had was a resolution that you were considering whether to reduce the size of the board from 7 to 5, and so the board simply didn't approve that resolution, but I don't see it as a vote to remain at 7. It wasn't agendized that way. It was just to approve that resolution at that time. And I heard Trustee Kermode make that statement during the purpose of that was at least for him to wait and look at the 7 and 5.5. So just as a point of clarification, I don't think the board has voted to remain at 7.
A question.
Well, that was awfully misleading then, if that's how it was brought to the board. That's ridiculous.
A question. What's the difference between a resolution and a vote? One supersedes the other?
Resolution is a way to formalize the board's thinking and vote around a particular topic.
And one thing I wanted to add is that if the waiver was approved, as Ms. Leone said, there would still need to be a resolution that we wanted to send it to the county to act on it. So just make sure that that piece is understood, that it's a twofold process.
That's correct. It's still in your control. As Ms. Leone said, our purpose is to try to allow you to have the options so you can make the decision with all the information.
And Trustee Kelly had one comment he wanted to make from his clarifying what he said previously.
Sorry, and I just wanted to point out to perhaps defer after Trustee Kelly's comments to Trustee Wood, because she's online. So I wanted to make sure she had an opportunity to weigh in as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. And I did have one more item, and I forgot. I don't know if this should be applied to a special meeting or a general meeting, but knowing there will be elections in November, that's what's supposed to happen either way. If there is a resignation, I would like a presentation of the appointment process, if that were to happen, if there were resignation of a current board member. What would the process be to appoint somebody if it was after the election or before? If we could, at some point, it doesn't have to, it's not today. I know General Counsel has to be involved. So I don't know which kind of a meeting it should fit in, but it is related to this topic. So
Okay.
however that's decided, please.
Understood. Trustee Wallet.
Yeah, I'd like a little more clarification, Grant. So one resolution can negate the other? And they're only temporary? They can be changed at any time with another resolution?
Mr. Wallach, I'm not sure what are we talking about a particular item that's been on the agenda?
No, you were speaking about the resolution, the vote for 7 board members for 4 to 3.
Right.
And you said that was tentative, that another resolution could come forward at a later date and override that? Is that correct?
No, all I said was that I thought it was inaccurate to say that the board had voted to remain at 7 trustees. What was on the agenda was a resolution to decrease size, and the board opted not to approve that, but that's different than voting to remain at 7. So that was my only point.
Okay. So if a resolution was brought back, it could overturn the prior one?
So you didn't approve the resolution to decrease, so there's nothing to overturn there.
I mean, to go back to 5?
Yes, if you're asking, could that be brought
Yes.
forth again? Yes, it could. I
It
think
could,
that was
okay.
discussed a little earlier. There's nothing to prevent you from doing that.
Okay. That helps. Thank you.
Okay, let me let Trustee Wood go ahead and ask her questions or comments online.
My comments are as the same as last week. I am comfortable with the maps the way they are.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Wood. Go ahead, Trustee Napier.
I would just say to the public, if and when the board decides to overturn this and go to 5-member board, take note who votes that way so you can vote them out. If they're going to take your voice away, don't forget that in November or the next time.
Okay, other board discussions, comments? Any final? Trustee Wallach?
Last board meeting, I made a recommendation to have more variety of maps for the public to choose from as opposed to 2. The cartographer made it very clear that would be a possibility, but nobody picked up on it. Currently, unless a resolution comes forward to reduce the board to 5 from 7, currently it's at 7, and by having 2 5-area maps and 2 7-area maps basically precluded 2 additional 7-area maps that the public could have had a choice in making a better decision on.
Any other board comments? Okay, they're hearing no other comments.
No comments from you? You have anything to say? Opinions?
I have not changed my opinion from what I said before. I think that I agree with Trustee Kelly. The demographers did a good job drawing out the 4 maps for us. I have no comments or criticisms on the maps.
One question. Do you plan on bringing a resolution forward next meeting for a possibility of 5?
There is no plans right now for a resolution to be on the next agenda. That's correct.
I'm not talking about plans, I'm talking about your intent. Based upon the discussion today, it indicated to me that there was a possibility that this resolution would be showing up next week.
I do not have that request, no.
It's not a request. I said it was my understanding from the conversation tonight that there would be a resolution next week for possible overturning.
Mr. Wallach, I believe somebody would have to request for that to be put on the agenda.
Request an open session?
Would have to request for the item to be put on an agenda, and I think what Ms. Weinstein is saying is that has not been done yet.
And I'm going to weigh in because that's not correct. I believe that a written request in alignment with the board bylaws was submitted by Trustee Kermode. That's my understanding.
Thank you for clarifying that. I think that's why you were asking, right?
Yes.
Thank you. That's an important factor to know. I think we should be very transparent about that you have made that request, right?
Yes, I made that very clear during the last board meeting, even though I was via Zoom. I made it clear, I believe, that I had submitted a written request to have the matter reconsidered.
Absolutely. President Weinstein did not acknowledge that just now, so I think it's very important that we clarify that.
I think what's the agenda for next week has not been prepared yet. So, but to the point that General Counsel was bringing up, there was a written request that I have seen from Trustee Kermode. And so,
That's
although
all he
the
was
agenda
asking.
hasn't
That's
been
all he was
prepared.
asking, and you said there was none, so that's not transparent.
Thank you. Any other board comments, questions? There being no further business to come before the board, the meeting is adjourned at approximately 6:10 p.m.
Don't you have to make a motion here, number 5?
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Thank you, Ms. Leone. Thank you, Mr. Herndon. Appreciate your input.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Night, board. Night.